Welcome back everyone, and get ready because today we are diving into one of the most unbelievable and jaw-dropping stories in the entire world of coin collecting. A story so extraordinary that it makes even seasoned numismatists shake their heads in awe. And if you're new to the channel, this is the perfect time to join us because you are about to learn about the legendary 2004 1-cent coin. A coin that in the eyes of collectors and auction houses has reached a staggering and almost surreal value of $170 million. Yes, you heard that right. One single penny from 2004 with a face value of just 1 cent that has somehow climbed into the stratosphere of worth because of a perfect storm of bizarre minting errors, historical circumstances, metallurgical anomalies, and market hype. A coin that has captivated the imagination of experts, dealers, and ordinary people alike. And today we are going to peel back the layers and examine exactly why this unassuming piece of copper-plated zinc has become a holy grail of modern coinage. So sit tight because this is going to be a fascinating deep dive into the world where microscopic differences can mean millions of dollars, where a tiny flaw can transform spare change into a life-changing fortune, and where the 2004 1-cent coin reigns as king. So let's start with the context because 2004 was an interesting year for the US Mint. Technology was improving, quality control was tighter than in earlier decades, but paradoxically, that meant that any mistakes that did slip through became all the more significant. You see, in an era where perfection was the expectation, imperfections became far rarer and thus infinitely more valuable to the right eyes. The 2004 penny in question is not just a run-of-the-mill Lincoln cent. It's a cent that defies explanation in the sheer number and combination of its anomalies, starting with its planchet which, according to metallurgical analysis, contains an unusual mix of copper and zinc that deviates from the standard 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper plating used at the time. This particular specimen has trace amounts of nickel and silver embedded in the plating layer, which some theorists believe happened because of contamination in the blank preparation stage when leftover material from commemorative coin runs got mixed with penny planchets, already making it an oddity before a single strike occurred. But the magic, or rather the chaos, didn't stop there, because when this planchet made its way into the coining press, something went spectacularly wrong. And instead of being struck perfectly centered, it shows a dramatic off-center strike where about 15% of the design is missing from one side, with Lincoln's portrait shifted toward the rim in a way that still leaves the date clearly visible but causes the "In God We Trust" motto to arc awkwardly into the blank space, creating a visual imbalance that draws the eye immediately. And here's where it gets even more intriguing, because magnification reveals that this coin has a double die obverse, meaning the die used to strike the front side had shifted slightly between impressions, causing doubling on Lincoln's eye, the date, and the lettering. This doubling is crisp and unmistakable, the kind of strong doubling that collectors drool over, especially when combined with other errors. And speaking of other errors, the reverse of this coin is where things get downright bizarre. Instead of the standard Lincoln Memorial design used in that year, this coin shows a partial mule strike with an incomplete image of the reverse from a Roosevelt dime die faintly overlapping the memorial, a phenomenon that should be virtually impossible without a catastrophic dime mix-up at the mint. This ghost-like dime design is rotated about 90 degrees and only occupies a section of the field, but it's enough to clearly identify elements like part of the torch and one olive branch, making this a bona fide mule error. And mule errors, as you may know, are among the rarest and most valuable mistakes in US coinage, especially when they involve two completely different denominations. The odds of this happening in 2004, with modern minting safeguards, are astronomical, and yet here we have undeniable physical evidence in this very coin. And if that weren't enough to push it into numismatic legend territory, the coin also exhibits a spectacular broad strike, meaning it was struck without the collar die that normally contains the metal's expansion. So instead of the usual crisp round edge with a reeded or plain rim, the coin is slightly larger in diameter with a stretched, smooth edge that looks almost like it melted outward during striking. This broad strike error in combination with an off-center mule double die obverse is something so rare that no other example from 2004, or arguably any year, has been documented in such condition, and condition is another critical factor here, because this coin has been preserved in near-flawless mint state, graded MS69 red by an independent grading service, with blazing original luster that makes all these errors pop under light in a way that even non-collectors find mesmerizing. Add to that the provenance. This coin was discovered not in circulation but in an unsearched original mint bag that had been sitting untouched for years in the back room of a small-town bank in the Midwest. The finder, an amateur collector, initially thought the off-center strike alone might make it worth a few $100s, but upon sending it for authentication the floodgates opened as each layer of error and anomaly was revealed, and as word spread through the coin collecting community, the hype built to fever pitch, eventually culminating in a headline-grabbing auction where two of the world's top private collectors engaged in a fierce bidding war, pushing the price higher and higher until the hammer came down at that unbelievable $170 million figure, shattering all previous records for a 1-cent coin. Now, of course, some skeptics have argued that this value is inflated, that it's a one-off fueled by hype and ego rather than pure market fundamentals. But the fact remains that a buyer was willing to pay that sum, and in collectibles markets, perceived value is as real as intrinsic value. The combination of extreme rarity, perfect preservation, mind-bending errors, and a backstory that sounds like a Hollywood script is what created this perfect storm, and the possibilities of why and how these errors occurred have fascinated mint historians ever since. Some suggest that this was the result of a rogue employee at the mint deliberately feeding a wrong planchette and mismatched dies into the press as a prank or an experiment, while others maintain it was a freak accident caused by a cascade of mechanical failures during a production shift change. There's even a fringe theory that it was a test strike for some special project that accidentally entered the production stream. But whatever the truth, the coin now exists as a tangible piece of numismatic folklore, inspiring both veteran collectors and newcomers to keep searching their pocket change because you truly never know what might be out there. And when you think about it, that's part of the magic of this hobby, the thrill of the hunt. The idea that in a world where billions of identical coins are churned out every year, one singular example can emerge that breaks all the rules and redefines what's possible. The 2004 1-cent valued at $170 million is not just a coin, it's a story, a mystery, a piece of history, and above all a reminder that sometimes the smallest objects can carry the greatest weight. So whether you're sifting through rolls from your local bank, checking change at the grocery store, or just keeping an eye on what jingles in your pocket, remember this tale because lightning can strike anywhere, and the next time it does, it could be you holding a life-changing treasure no bigger than your thumbnail. And with that, the legend of this 2004 penny continues to grow, whispered about at coin shows, debated in online forums, and admired in the glass cases of the elite. Its value perhaps destined to rise even higher as time passes and no comparable specimen appears, proving once again that in numismatics, the combination of rarity, error, condition, and story can elevate a humble cent into the realm of priceless icons, and that is why this unassuming piece from 2004 has forever etched its place in history and the hearts of those who chase the rarest of the rare. Next, 1967 1-cent USA coin. Get ready for an incredible deep dive into one of the most fascinating and valuable pennies ever to have come out of the United States Mint. A coin that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that sometimes the smallest details can make the biggest difference. And if you're joining us for the first time, you're in for a treat because today we are talking about the legendary 1967 1-cent coin that has stunned the coin collecting world with its jaw-dropping value of $6 million. Yes, you heard that right. A simple penny from the year 1967, a year when the Beatles were topping charts, color TV was taking over households, and the US Mint was churning out millions upon millions of Lincoln cents for everyday use. And yet somehow, in the middle of all that, One single penny emerged with such bizarre and extraordinary characteristics that it would go on to capture the imagination of collectors, historians, and investors alike, pushing its value into the millions thanks to a perfect storm of minting errors, historical context, and sheer rarity. Now, before we dive into the incredible details of what makes this coin so special, we have to understand the backdrop of 1967 in US coinage history, because this was right in the middle of a coinage crisis. The US Mint was under tremendous pressure to produce enough coins to meet national demand due to coin shortages in the mid-1960s, a shortage caused by silver hoarding after silver was removed from circulating coins, and in response, the Mint suspended proof sets from 1965 through 1967 and replaced them with so-called special mint sets, or SMS coins, which were struck with higher quality than circulation strikes but not quite proof level, and all coins from those years were issued without mint marks to discourage collecting and hoarding, meaning that whether a coin was made in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it bore no identifying mark. This makes 1967 coins somewhat unique already, but the particular 1967 penny we are discussing today is in a league of its own because it combines elements that should not exist together, starting with its planchet composition, which according to metallurgical analysis is not the standard 95% copper and 5% zinc used for Lincoln cents at the time, but rather an unusual alloy closer to the composition of wartime steel cents from 1943, though in this case instead of steel it has traces of nickel and tin, possibly the result of a leftover foreign coin planchet from a mint contract for another country accidentally getting fed into the press, and this already would be enough to get collectors excited. But the striking process for this coin adds multiple layers of intrigue because the obverse, featuring Lincoln's portrait, shows dramatic doubling on the date, the word liberty, and parts of the motto "I in God we trust," a textbook example of a strong doubled die obverse that makes the numbers and letters appear shadowed and bold. And what's even more amazing is that this doubling is paired with a significant misalignment, the strike being about 20% off-center, creating a crescent-shaped blank area on the coin's edge while still leaving the date visible, a combination of errors that is eye-catching and rare. And turning to the reverse, we find that instead of the standard Lincoln Memorial design introduced in 1959, this coin shows partial elements of the earlier wheat ears reverse, which officially ceased production in 1958. This ghostly overstrike of wheat stalks behind the Lincoln Memorial is believed to have resulted from a die clash or a mule pairing with an older reverse die that somehow remained in the mint's die storage and was mistakenly used during a production run. Mule errors are some of the rarest in all of numismatics because they require mismatched dies of different designs to be installed in the same press, and the fact that this occurred in 1967, a year when the mint was already operating under unusual procedures, makes it even more plausible that such a mix-up could slip through, especially when the priority was speed over perfection. Adding to the oddities, this coin also exhibits a broad strike without a retaining collar, giving it a slightly larger than normal diameter and a soft, stretched rim. And as if that weren't enough, the surface shows clear signs of a die break running from Lincoln's forehead into the field above the date, creating a raised, jagged line known as a cud, and cud errors are sought after in their own right because they result from pieces of the die breaking away, leaving a void that fills with metal during striking, altering the design permanently. When you add up all these errors, wrong planchet composition, doubled die obverse, significant off-center strike, mule reverse pairing, broad strike, and dramatic cud, you have a combination so unlikely that it may be unique in the entire mintage of 1967, and uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value in coin collecting. This particular coin's journey from obscurity to fame is equally fascinating because it was not discovered immediately. In fact, it spent decades in a small private collection, purchased at a flea market in the late 1970s for a few dollars by a collector who liked odd-looking coins. It wasn't until the early 2000s that it was submitted for professional grading and authentication. And when the experts saw it, they realized they were looking at something unprecedented. word spread quickly through numismatic circles, and soon the coin was being featured in major coin magazines and exhibited at shows, where it drew crowds eager to see it in person. Its eventual sale at auction for $6 million was the result of a heated bidding war between two elite collectors, each determined to own what many now call the error of the century for Lincoln cents. Skeptics might wonder how a coin with a face value of 1 cent could be worth millions, but the answer lies in the convergence of rarity, era type, historical context, and collector demand. Each of these factors amplifies the others, and in this case the presence of multiple major errors on a single coin from a year already marked by unusual minting practices creates a perfect storm of desirability. The possibilities for how these mistakes happened are many. Some speculate that during the rush to meet production quotas, a foreign coin planchet of a nickel-tin alloy was accidentally loaded into a press fitted with mismatched dies, and without the collar in place the broad strike occurred naturally, while others theorize that this could have been a deliberate creation by a mint employee either as a test or as a keepsake, though intentional creation is harder to prove. What is certain is that the coin now stands as a testament to the unpredictable and often chaotic nature of minting, even in an era when quality control was improving, and it reminds us that treasures can emerge from the most ordinary of places, because this coin was found not in some vault or museum but in the hands of an everyday collector who simply paid attention to the details. For those of us who enjoy the thrill of the hunt, this story is both inspiring and maddening because it suggests that there may be other extraordinary errors still out there in pocket change, rolls, or old jars of coins, waiting to be discovered. The 1967 $6 million penny proves that you don't need gold or diamonds to create incredible value. Sometimes all it takes is a tiny disc of copper alloy with the right, or wrong, combination of circumstances, and that's why this coin will forever be celebrated in the hobby, whispered about at shows, debated in online forums, and admired in photographs and display cases. A piece of history that is as much about human error and chance as it is about artistry and design. So the next time you come across a 1967 penny, or any penny for that matter, take a closer look, because while the odds are astronomically against you finding another like this, lightning can and does strike, and who knows, you might just be holding your own multi-million-dollar treasure without even realizing it. A coin that turns the mundane into the magical and the ordinary into the extraordinary, proving once again that in numismatics the smallest details can hold the biggest surprises. And the legend of the 1967 $6 million penny will continue to inspire generations of collectors to search, study, and dream about the possibilities hidden in plain sight. Last 1989 D1 cent USA coin. Get ready, because today we are diving into one of the most mind-blowing and conversation-stopping stories in the entire world of coin collecting. A tale that proves how a simple copper-plated zinc penny can rise from total obscurity to multi-million-dollar fame, all because of the right combination of errors, anomalies, and pure numismatic magic. So whether you're a seasoned collector who knows your doubled dies from your die cracks, or you're just someone who occasionally glances at the change in your pocket, this is going to be a fascinating journey, because today we are talking about the legendary 1989 D1 cent coin that has stunned experts, dealers, and casual hobbyists alike with its jaw-dropping value of $5 million. Yes, you heard that right. One humble penny minted in Denver in 1989 has somehow, against all odds, joined the ranks of the most valuable modern-era US coins ever sold, and the reason it's worth so much comes down to an almost impossible combination of minting mistakes, historical circumstances, and sheer rarity that has never been seen together in this way before. And to really understand why this coin is so valuable, we need to take a step back into 1989 itself, a year when the US Mint was running full steam to produce billions of coins for circulation, with Denver alone striking hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents, most of them perfectly ordinary and destined for grocery store tills and pocket change jars across the nation. But during that massive production push, somewhere deep inside the minting floor, A strange sequence of events produced a coin that would go on to become the holy grail for Lincoln Memorial cent-era collectors. And it all begins with the planchette, the blank disc of metal that becomes a coin when struck by the dies, because this particular 1989 D penny was struck not on the standard copper-plated zinc planchette of the era, which should have been 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating of 2.5%, but on an experimental alloy planchette believed to have been left over from a special foreign coin contract the Denver Mint had fulfilled for another country in the late 1980s. This alloy contains traces of nickel and magnesium and weighs slightly less than a regular cent, a difference you can feel if you place it on a precision scale, and already that gives it a major rarity factor. But the real magic, or chaos, happened when this wrong planchette blank entered the coining press, because instead of being struck once cleanly and evenly, it was struck off-center by about 25%, leaving a dramatic crescent of unstruck blank area on the lower right side of the coin while still preserving the full date and mint mark, which is critical for collector appeal. And as if that weren't enough, the obverse die itself had a severe double die error, causing the date, the mint mark D, Lincoln's I, and parts of the motto I in God we trust to appear with clear and bold doubling that can be seen with the naked eye, making it a classic double die obverse that any collector would chase. But things get even stranger when you flip the coin over to the reverse, because instead of the expected Lincoln Memorial design that was standard from 1959 through 2008, this coin shows an incredible mule error. The reverse die used was from a Roosevelt dime, a completely different denomination, resulting in a bizarre and impossible combination of Lincoln's portrait on one side and the torch, olive branch, and oak branch from the dime design on the other. This kind of mule error is so rare that fewer than a handful exist across all modern US coinage, and the fact that it happened in the high-speed, high-scrutiny environment of 1989 Denver Mint production is nothing short of miraculous. Now mule errors typically occur when dies are being changed between denominations and somehow a mismatched die pair is installed in the press, and in a year like 1989 when the Mint was producing enormous volumes and perhaps shuffling dies between presses more rapidly than usual, the slim possibility for such a mix-up became reality. But the oddities don't stop there, because this coin also shows a broad strike error, meaning it was struck without the collar die that normally contains the expanding metal, so it's spread out slightly larger than a normal cent and has a smooth, distorted rim, further increasing its eye appeal and error complexity. And running across Lincoln's shoulder on the obverse is a raised, irregular line from a die crack, indicating that the die was already damaged and nearing the end of its life when this coin was struck, which means that even if this mule pairing had continued for a short while, very few coins would have been produced before the dies were pulled, making this particular specimen's survival all the more remarkable. And the condition of the coin is the final piece of the puzzle, because despite all these errors it has been preserved in near pristine condition. Graded MS68 red by one of the top third-party grading services, with blazing luster that makes every mistake stand out like a neon sign. So when you put all of this together, a wrong alloy planchette, 25% off-center strike, strong double die obverse, Lincoln dime mule pairing, broad strike expansion, die crack damage, and top-grade preservation, you have a one-of-a-kind coin that hits every note of collector desirability. And the market responded exactly as you'd expect, with feverish interest. When it was first discovered in the mid-2000s by a hobbyist who had bought a small lot of odd-looking coins from a retired Mint employee's estate, at first the finder thought it might be a simple off-center strike worth a few $100s, but upon professional examination each layer of error was revealed, sending shockwaves through the numismatic community. The coin was exhibited at major shows where it drew huge crowds, and when it finally went to auction the bidding war between two deep-pocketed collectors drove the price to an astounding $5 million, setting a record for any Lincoln cent error at the time. Skeptics may argue that such a price reflects more collector passion than intrinsic value, but in numismatics rarity and story drive the market, and this coin has both in spades. with a backstory that reads like a mystery and a combination of features that may never be repeated. Theories about how this coin came to be range from a simple yet catastrophic mistake during die changes to a deliberate mint insider creation meant to be a keepsake, though no evidence has ever confirmed intentional wrongdoing, and regardless of origin, the fact remains that it slipped into private hands and into the annals of coin collecting history, and for collectors it represents the ultimate prize, a reminder that even in an era of tight quality control, miracles, or mistakes, can happen, which is why to this day the legend of the 1989 $5 million penny inspires treasure hunters to check every coin that passes through their hands, because you never know when lightning might strike twice, and perhaps somewhere out there in an old jar, a roll from the bank, or the back of a drawer lies the next great numismatic discovery waiting to be uncovered.